We're talking slasher icons at the Horror Movie Syllabus. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. I'm Professor Victor, and today I am excited. Why? Because we're talking about slasher icons. Slasher icons got to be my favorite subgenre of horror. I love these movies. I can't get enough of these movies. I watch these movies over and over and over again, and I'm excited to talk about them today. But before we get into it, if you're new to the Horror Movie Syllabus, I recommend you check out our introduction video. It'll help explain a little bit about what the Horror Movie Syllabus is all about. There's a link to that in the description below. But in short, we look at all the subgenres of modern horror and examine 3 representative films from each subgenre. Today's subgenre, as mentioned before, is slasher icons, and we're going to look at the 3 best slasher icons of all time. That's not hyperbole, that's a fact. Take it to the bank. I'm telling you, the best slasher icons. Now, those of you that have looked at the Horror Movie Syllabus will recognize that slasher icons is separated from slashers as 2 separate subgenres. The reason for that is pretty simple. I love slasher films and I wanted to talk about more of them. So you have the slasher subgenre proper, which will talk about various slasher films, and we'll get to that in another video. And then you've got the slasher icons. These are the guys. They are our modern representations of monsters. Back in the early 20th century, we had Dracula and Frankenstein and the Wolfman, the classic Universal monsters, and those have endured as monster icons for going on 100 years. Little children know who Dracula and Frankenstein are. These slasher icons are our modern day representations of those classic monsters. These are the characters, the monsters that kids also know, whether they've even seen the movies or not. Their legacies have endured and they are true horror icons in their own right. So let's go ahead and get into discussing them. Now, as you guys know, we usually break up the movies into 3 levels: undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate levels. And in this case, those levels are going to represent simply chronological order. Why? Because I didn't want to rank these movies in any other way. I love them all. It's Sophie's choice. Don't make me choose. I don't want to have to pick one over the other. With that said, let's go ahead and get right into it. The first slasher icon we're going to discuss today is Michael Myers in the 1978 film Halloween. A lot of people will look at Halloween as the origin of the slasher film, and they're not exactly wrong. However, the slasher origins go all the way back to 1960s Psycho and Peeping Tom. And even the 1970s have other films that fall under the slasher motif, notably Black Christmas and arguably the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But Halloween usually gets most of the credit, and it's well deserved. Most slasher movies are following the Halloween model. If you haven't seen Halloween, well, frankly, you should. But in short, the plot's about a deranged serial killer who escapes a mental facility and stalks babysitters on Halloween night. It's a simple formula, one that's easy to follow, and one that's been copied ad nauseum throughout the 80s, 90s, and even today. And the formula works. It's fun. It delivers on chills and suspense, gore, and it's a good time if you're the kind of person who wants to have a thrill ride horror film. Slasher movies are going to generally deliver, and Halloween delivers more than most. One of the reasons why is it's just really well made. It's directed by legendary director John Carpenter, who we are going to talk about a lot on this channel. In fact, I think he has more films on the Horror Movie Syllabus than any other director. And he directs it extremely well. It's a low-budget film, but you'd never necessarily guess it to look at it. It's got great production values. It's filmed really well. The acting is top-notch. Well, top-notch by its star, Jamie Lee Curtis, anyways. And it's got an iconic theme song. Carpenter did the music for the movie as well, and it is absolutely fantastic. It's part of what makes the movie so memorable, so successful, and frankly, just an absolute gem of a horror film. Not only is it one of the best slasher horror films of all time, it's arguably one of the best horror films of all time, period, regardless of subgenre. It's a remarkably good film that holds up even today and taps into our fear of what's outside in the dark when you're home alone. It is a very, very effective film. I love it dearly. The villain of the film, Michael Myers, is a slasher icon of the first order. He is memorable while being completely blank and unnervingly without motive or without explanation. And that's, I think, part of what makes him so scary and so effective. Now, the many, many sequels and remakes and reboots in the film series go on to explain his character a little bit more, give him more backstory, give him more motivation. And a lot of people feel that that was a mistake. And they're not wrong. It's not necessarily better to know more about him. Keeping him as this mysterious, unstoppable force of evil really is probably what makes him so effectively scary. That said, I love all the sequels. I just do. I know they're not all good. In fact, there's quite a few of them that are particularly bad. I don't care. I love them. I don't care. I don't care if it's Busta Rhymes doing karate against Michael Myers. I don't care if it's Michael Myers trying to kill Michelle Williams and Josh Hartnett. I don't care if it's Paul Rudd fighting Michael Myers. I love it all. I love every bit of it. Every sequel to this movie, the remakes to the movie, the reboots to the movie. I love every bit of it. Um, Even though the continuity is totally screwed up, I don't care. I just love it. I'm hoping you guys love it too, but if you've never experienced Halloween, the original, at a bare minimum, check out the original. I'd also recommend the latest Halloween to come out as of the time of this recording, which is 2018's Halloween. Why they also called that one Halloween when it's a sequel to the original Halloween, I don't know. That was a ridiculous idea. But, anyways, I recommend that one as well. If you were going to see just one of the sequels, that's the one to see. It's really good and ignores all the other ones in a really clever way. I could sit here and rave about Halloween forever, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say check out the original. Check them all out if you enjoy them. They're a blast. They're wonderful. I adore Michael Myers and I adore this series. The second slasher icon we're going to be talking about today is Jason Voorhees of Friday the 13th. Now, before I say anything else, let's go ahead and just put a spoiler alert right now. If you haven't seen the original Friday the 13th movie, go check it out right now and then come back and watch this video because I don't really want to spoil it for you. And there's really no way to talk about this movie and Jason Voorhees without spoiling it for you. So stop, watch the movie, come back. Okay, you're back now. So, as we know, Jason Voorhees is not the killer in Friday the 13th. And that is part of why that movie works so well today. Back in the day when the movie came out in 1980, that was not a big deal. Nobody knew who Jason was. Nobody cared who Jason was. The movie was more of a whodunit. And if you've seen the movie, you know now that the whodunit mystery is part of what drives the movie. And you find out when Jason's mother is the killer, that is a surprise, but it's not the surprise that it is now. Now it works really well because fans are expecting to see a guy in a hockey mask show up. But that guy in the hockey mask doesn't show up to the sequel, and he doesn't show up with a hockey mask till part three. Now, that said, the end of the movie does set up Jason for the upcoming sequels, and it's a very effective scare at the end of the movie. But if we're being honest, Friday the 13th is not a Jason film. Not really. That said, I do think it's an excellent film. I love it dearly, and that's why it's put here on the syllabus. It is a Halloween ripoff. Make no mistake, make no bones about that. Sean Cunningham, the creator of Friday the 13th, has pretty much admitted that he was ripping off Halloween when he made Friday the 13th. Halloween was very successful, low budget film that made a ton of money, and he wanted to do the same thing. I don't think he really anticipated it turning into a franchise on its own right, and that's evidenced by the fact that the idea to put Jason in the film at the end was an afterthought, a last minute addition to the movie. I won't go into the details of the making of the movie too much because there are multiple documentaries that go into this. I'd recommend all of them, especially Crystal Lake Memories. We might be talking about that movie in the horror movie syllabus sometime later. But I will say that putting Jason into the series was a brilliant one because it's allowed the series to carry on for the next 12 movies and counting. And again, this is a series that I absolutely adore. I pretty much love every entry into the Friday the 13th series. Yes, that includes the remake, although, yeah, the remake's not the greatest ending in the world, but I actually like it. Let me know why you think I'm wrong in the comments below. But I do. I love these movies. I love Jason. Um, Jason Goes to Hell, not so much, but we can get into the specific sequels maybe in another video. The fact of the matter is, I'm a huge fan of Friday the 13th. Um, if I have a favorite, if I had to pick one of them, it's probably this one, as you can tell by the shirt. Um, I don't know. I just love Friday the 13th. I know they're derivative. I know that they're a copycat of Halloween and that the sequels are basically the same thing over and over again, just killing a bunch of camp counselors in various creative ways. It doesn't matter. I just find them to be tremendous fun. I've loved these movies since I was a child. I don't remember the first time I saw Friday the 13th, but I do remember seeing Friday the 13th Part 4, the supposed final chapter, in theaters as a child. So I would have been probably 9 or 10 when that movie came out. Way too young to be seeing that kind of movie, but there I was in the theater checking it out. And I remember seeing it with my cousins and coming out afterwards and talking about which kill was our favorite. Did that have any kind of long term effect on me? I don't know. I run the horror movie syllabus. You tell me. All I know for sure is that my love for Jason and the Friday the 13th films has persisted for years and years and years. Uh, the 90s things got a little bit bleak. The sequels were pretty bad at that point, and I talk about it in another video that I was kind of turning off to horror at that point. But I've found a love even for those bad Friday the 13th sequels. Really have come to appreciate the campiness, the silliness, the derivativeness, the the repetition of it all. I really can't praise these movies enough. It is, again, another formulaic slasher film series, and it doesn't do a whole lot that's original other than give you a really iconic character, and that's why he's on our slasher icons. And the last slasher icon we're going to talk about in this video is Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, we just talked about how Jason Voorhees is derivative of Michael Myers and how the slasher genre tends to be kind of formulaic and the same killer stalking teens motif. Nightmare on Elm Street was a little bit different. Created by legendary director Wes Craven, who we've talked about before on the Horror Movie Syllabus, and we'll talk about again on the Horror Movie Syllabus. Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street was a breath of fresh air into the slasher genre, as Freddy Krueger represents a former child murderer who was burned alive by a bunch of parents in the neighborhood and now stalks their children in their dreams. If he kills them in their dreams, they die in real life. It's a fresh spin on the genre, and it allows for some really creative and inventive scenes. Scenes that are a little bit more creative and inventive than somebody just getting slashed or getting their head chopped off. And on top of that, Freddy Krueger spoke. Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, they never said a word. They were the strong silent type, and their silence made them all the more creepy. Freddy, on the other hand, you can't get him to shut up. He likes to crack a good joke when he's killing you, and I think that's a part of why he became insanely popular in the 1980s. The movie debuted in 1984, and Freddy was a phenomenon, the likes of which we may not ever see again, frankly. I mean, think about this for a second. Freddy Krueger is a horribly disfigured, child murdering serial killer, and they were making lunch pails and costumes and toys and all kinds of things geared towards children with Freddy on them. That's almost unheard of. But if you compare Freddy to the original horror icons of Dracula and Frankenstein, it starts to make a little bit more sense. Now, one thing that people don't often know is that the original Nightmare on Elm Street doesn't really have the wisecracking Freddy that you come to know and love. He doesn't really show up until part 3. In part 1, he does talk, he does make a few, I guess, jokes, but in reality, he's pretty scary. And the movie itself is not really trying to have a lot of levity in it, it's unrelentingly scary. Part 2 doesn't really quite have the Freddy character nailed down either, although I'm going to be talking about part 2 in another video on the horror movie syllabus, so look out for that later on. Part 3 is where they finally get the formula right and have the punning, funny, wisecracking Freddy that everybody's come to know and love. I think that's part of what makes the Freddy formula work. He's both funny and scary, and that funniness undercuts the scariness so that the average horror film goer can watch it without getting too upset or disturbed by it. Like the other two slasher icons, Freddy's had many, many sequels. They do diminish in quality a little bit, in my opinion, with the exception of New Nightmare, which I really like and which I talked about a little bit in our postmodern video. It's probably safe to say that I am less of a Freddy fan than a Michael or a Jason fan, probably because the sequels are a little less good to me or a little less fun to me. But we're splitting hairs. I still love Freddy and I love this series and I can't get enough of it. If you can't get enough of these kind of movies either, let me know, because I'm considering maybe doing a deeper dive on each of these series and talking about the individual sequels a little bit more in depth. If that's something that's interesting to you, let me know in the comments below and I'll think about whether or not we're going to go ahead and do that. After all, there's still so much to talk about with all of these series. There's famous people that weren't quite so famous when they were in this series. There is the changing of the characters from movie to movie, the changing of their masks or their looks from movie to movie. There is the remakes for all of them. There's a lot of ground to cover for these three horror icons, and I'm game to cover it if you guys are. Just let me know. For now, we're going to call it a wrap on the slasher icons. However, I'm going to leave you with a few extra credit movies like I usually do. You'll note that a lot of the expected slasher icons I'm not going to mention right now, such as Chucky, Candyman, Pinhead, Leatherface, Jigsaw, Ghostface. There's a reason for that. Every one of those is going to get talked about in a different place in the horror movie syllabus, so stay tuned for that. Don't worry, they're all going to get their due. That means, though, that our extra credit's going to go with some lesser known horror slasher icons. The first series I'm going to mention is Hatchet. Hatchet is very similar in theme and look to Friday the 13th. It owes a lot to that series. It's about Victor Crowley, and he is, like Jason, a big hulking killer. I really like that series. It's really, really good. I do think that Victor Crowley has the potential to become a slasher icon, but so far he hasn't quite cracked the ranks of the people I've already mentioned before. But I'd still check this series out if I was you. The next series I'll mention is Maniac Cop series. The Maniac Cop series is a blast. I really like it. I don't think it's quite as famous or as well liked as some of the other movies I've mentioned here, and that's a shame because it's a lot of fun. I'd like to see it continue on, but I don't think there's any plans to reboot it or have any new movies come out anytime soon. I certainly haven't heard anything about that. If you know anything about that, please leave a comment down below. I'd like to know about it, but if you haven't seen Maniac Cop before, check it out. It's a fun movie. I really like that one. And the last extra credit movie I'll mention is Jeepers Creepers. I really like the Jeepers Creepers movies. I think the creeper design is really, really interesting. He is less of a slasher than most of the other movies that we've talked about. He's arguably more of a monster, and you could make the argument that he belongs in a different subgenre. But the series seems to be designed kind of like a slasher series would be designed, so that's why he's getting a mention here. That said, there's some problems with the Jeepers Creepers franchise, and it's nothing to do with the films themselves, which I think are a lot of fun and pretty well made. It's more to do with the director of the movies, Victor Salva, who is a convicted child molester, and that is problematic. So I am mentioning these movies because I think they're quite good, and I think that they should still be recognized because a lot of other people did work on them, including the actors and the crew. And I don't think that those people's work shouldn't be recognized because the director is a reprehensible human being. I don't know how you feel about cancel culture, and if you don't want to watch these movies because of what he's done, I completely understand that. I have no objections or qualms about that whatsoever. I personally just think that when you're talking about something like film where so many people are involved working on it, I think that not viewing that or boycotting it because of one person and letting all those other people not get the appreciation or credit or attention that they deserve kind of sucks. It's almost like making their crime even worse. So that's just my personal opinion. If you disagree about it, that's fine. But I'm mentioning it here because I like Jeepers Creepers, but I didn't want to shy away from the controversy of it. I wanted to mention it and let you guys know. So that's all we've got for the slasher icons today. Let me know if you think I've missed any slasher icons. I haven't mentioned any. And for the ones that I did mention, let me know if you can guess which other subgenres they're going to pop up in. I think it'd be kind of fun to see if you can guess where I wind up putting those movies. So leave a comment down below if you can figure that out. Until next time, class dismissed.